You know that sound, and you know what's going on. It's Sports Talk. Come to you from the radio studio of Long Beach City College at the PCC campus. We want to welcome you guys to a special edition of Sports Talk. My name is Ed, and I'm here with today's guest host, Sean Quinn, PA announcer with Long Beach City College Athletics.
Wait, what channel am I on? Hold on.
You're on this one right here.
Which is Mike?
Yeah.
It might be.
Yeah. Jason out here. There we go. Hi.
Hey,
welcome
now,
back. Welcome back.
Hello, everybody.
Good. So it's been a while, man. So tell me, how are we looking for athletics?
You know, that's kind of hard to tell right now because the football season hasn't really started just quite yet. We've got 2 more weeks, a week and a half. Next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, but next Saturday is the first game of the football season. It is a 1:00 afternoon game against Riverside City College. And that's the first, that's starting the season off with a bang on the conference side of things for the first game of the season out of 10 games. Plus, the first home game, the home opener, is on
9/9. Actually, is on 9/14. 2 weeks from now, the Vikings will kick off. Your Long Beach City College Vikings will kick off against Bakersfield here at the Vet. You can come purchase tickets at the front at Vet Stadium on the day of. I believe,
or in advance.
Or if I believe,
box office,
tell me if they still do this. If you have your ASB sticker, we get in without paying. I used to do that back in the day.
I don't know. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, times have changed.
It might be.
Times have changed. Sure. Times have changed, so we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, first game of the season is on the 14th against Bakersfield. So come out and support your Vikings.
First game at home is against Bakersfield.
Yeah, first game at home. The home opener. The first game at your own place.
And then homecoming game.
Yeah, homecoming game is actually against Orange Coast. That's on October 21st. It's a Saturday, 1 p.m. start. So
kind of interesting to see the homecoming game.
Yeah, I wonder. I still want to know what was all that about, but we'll just have to wait.
It'll start at 1:00 for the homecoming game.
Yeah.
Typically, homecoming games do tend to be at night.
Yeah. Last year was
that was the game that we didn't broadcast last year.
Actually, I was here with SoCal College Sports. We actually did call the game.
Oh, that's right.
You can go on YouTube, SoCal College Sports. They live stream games, depending on location. So if you're one of those colleges that hire SoCal College Sports, you can check out their YouTube channel and see their games. And I was
not this year though. SoCal Sports will not have any Long Beach City games. That is all us this year.
Let's kind of leave that on the table. We don't know yet. We'll see what happens. But we do have some other things we want to talk about. Talk about the NASCAR playoffs. We're one race away from the chase, or they call it the chase, or they just change it to playoffs.
So NASCAR is weird now. The regular season is now a regular season. And then they go into the 10 weeks of the playoffs, which used to be the chase for the Sprint Cup or Nextel, or however old you may be of a NASCAR fan. The last 10 weeks of the season.
Remember when it used to be the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, and then they made that change to the NASCAR Nextel Cup, which was still popular, and then they went to Sprint.
Nextel became Sprint, and then Monster Energy bought out Sprint, or Monster Energy bought the naming rights to the Cup Series, so it became the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, and now Monster Energy is gone, and now it's just the NASCAR Cup Series.
Yeah, and then for those of you that know about the playoffs start in about a week or two after the Darlington race, the traditional Labor Day weekend Darlington race. It'll be on NBC Sports.
The Lady in Black, as they call it.
Lady in Black.
That's not the Southern 500. That was earlier this year.
Yeah, that was another race there, but
I think they're doing the throwback schemes again for this week, aren't they?
Yeah, this is actually the time where they do the throwback. So
because they did the throwback when they were still on Fox, and
I remember 2 years ago, William Byron brought back the Flame 24. That was a race that got spun out by Joey Logano. That got me pissed. I was like, no way.
Well, you want to talk about Joey Logano getting spun? Let's look back 2 weeks ago to Richmond and Austin Dillon, who got some very bad lashing after his late race last lap heroics, that some might call it in RCR, Richard Childress Racing. But other members of the NASCAR community say that that was Bush League where he wrecks 2 cars at the end of the race and wins. NASCAR had since issued penalties to both the driver
And
the
Richard
team.
Richard Childress.
Oh, yeah.
But for those of you that don't know what happened, we're gonna go ahead and play the clip. This is in the closing laps of Richmond. This is about a couple weeks ago.
Joey Logano, the 3 and 4, the final time, there's the contact. He does get to it. The 11 on the inside. He gets into the wall. Dillon winning as the line.
So that was supposed to be the win that got him in the playoffs, but in the coming days after that race, NASCAR issued penalties on the 3 team, basically for aggressively rough driving. Basically, he took them out on purpose. NASCAR states it was like an intentional wreck, but I mean that to me that's a little controversial because we've seen drivers retaliate or try to take out other drivers just to get into playoffs. So I mean I don't understand how is it that this guy does it and then he's being punished for it. We go back to drivers that broke the rules. I mean let's look at Joey Logano. He was a victim of that a couple years ago with Matt Kenseth at Bristol in 2015. Everybody remembers that race. He spun him out. That gave Jeff Gordon the spot in the championship four. And then you go back to the year before with Ryan Newman, smacking out Kyle Larson to get his championship four spot, and he kicked out Jeff Gordon. So I don't understand why this guy makes his move, and next thing you know, you're gonna keep your win, but you're not going to playoffs.
Yeah, it's gonna have to take a miracle for Austin Dillon to reach the playoffs at this point. Even though it's a field of 16 out of 40 drivers, it's still going into that race at Richmond. Austin Dillon was in the very low 30s in terms of playoff standings because he had not won a race this year. He had been winless. He didn't have the points. He was not finishing well within the races this year. And he goes on, gets the win, thinks he's going to be locked into the playoffs, and a few days later NASCAR says, sorry, but your actions are going to face consequences, and you're not going to be in the playoffs anymore.
And they had a race this past weekend in Daytona, and that was the talk of the garage was, that type of racing. In NASCAR has always been, you heard this too. I mean, you've seen the sport. They've always had this phrase called "boys have at it." Basically they settle their differences on track.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of boys have at it, I think of one person, Kyle Busch. I remember when I think it was a truck race, and he went after somebody, and next thing you know, he ends up getting like punished the whole weekend because it was a case of boys have at it.
I think that was when he took out Ron Hornaday.
Yeah, he took out a championship contender. If you
That
don't,
was at Texas. He took out Ron Hornaday. They parked him for the rest of the race because, I mean, he had wrecked both their trucks, but they parked him for the race, and they
yeah, we'll talk about the penalties in a minute, but let's go back to memory lane.
Ooh, Chloe wide into turn 4. That moves Kyle Busch all the way up the racetrack. He has to catch it before they hit the wall. And Hornaday catches the wall.
Caution down.
Caution is going to come out. Both drivers trying to get by look like the 17 of Timothy Peters. They slid up the racetrack, and now Kyle Busch not happy at all. And Kyle Busch is going to turn on 33 into the wall. Championship contender Hornaday in the wall.
Well, Kyle Busch should be parked for this race and maybe the rest of the season for that.
And Phil Parsons was right with his commentary there that Kyle Busch should be parked. He was parked for the remainder of that race.
And the weekend.
And was issued
He was issued
strict penalties from NASCAR across all 3 levels because he was planning on pulling off the Triple Crown that weekend with the trucks, the then Nationwide Series, and also the Cup Series.
Yeah, the next day when they were doing the practice for the Sprint Cup Series, he was hauled into a driver's meeting earlier in the morning, and then NASCAR made the announcement that he will be parked. He was parked for that whole weekend, so he missed out. Like Sean said, he missed out on the Busch race, the Nationwide race, and the Cup race, and he actually was docked driver owner points for that, so that dropped him in the lower seat. But I remember he was facing a lot of scrutiny for that one because even his sponsors were like, "I don't know if we're going to keep this guy or not."
It was an interesting weekend that year for Mr. Busch. there. I try to look back and there's not a, I, man, help me out
This
here.
was like 13 years ago. We can't remember it, which is like very funny. But
I was a young NASCAR fan back then.
I've been, yeah, with Jeff Gordon.
The GOAT, Mr. Jeff Gordon.
But you look at him now. Are you shocked that he hasn't performed well this year compared to last year where he had a couple wins?
Well, last year he moves over. He moves to Richard Childress Racing and joins Austin Dillon and becomes teammates with him, and
he had a stellar year too.
Goes back to drive the 8 car and wins the last race at what was, and for the foreseeable future, the last race at Fontana. I was there. That was a very nice day. Got to see a double dip. The Xfinity race had been canceled the night before due to weather, so they ran it. They ran it about 45 minutes after the conclusion of the Cup race. So that was a fun day. Didn't get home till late that day.
Yeah.
He came close to the championship, but ultimately it was who was it? Was it Joey got it again last year, didn't he?
The championship?
Who won the championship?
No, it was Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney won. That was the first time since they formatted a championship since 04, or I think 04, 05, that the champion didn't win the race since it was the Nextel chase, because the Nextel chase, you didn't have to win the race to win the championship. You just had to finish because they had the 10 race with the points. But then when they went to Spring Cup, they did the playoff format. You go to the last race, you basically have to win the last race to win a championship.
And see, before they came up with these, when Monster Energy took over as the primary sponsor for the Cup Series, they changed the format of the playoffs, where it's now you start off with 16 drivers, and it progressively gets lower and lower as those 10 weeks go by.
Yeah, 3 races per round. So there's a round of 16, the start of the 16, and then
16.
After the third race, 4 drivers get docked. So then it goes to the round of 12. And then after that, 3 races go to the round 8. And then after that, the championship 4, where whoever finishes on top of the 4 wins the title.
And last year it turned out that Ryan Blaney did not win the race. It was who?
I believe it was Ross Chastain that won that race. And it's funny because I picked Chase Elliott to win that race, but he got dumped by Chastain on a restart that hurt his chances. And then, almost like the 2 Hendrick drivers were in there, or the 3 of them actually. Kyle Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, they were in the championship 4. I was rooting for Elliott. Elliott got taken out.
So it was Ross Chastain. He won the race. Ryan Blaney, who finished on top of the championship 4, he wins the championship. Then you have Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Chris Buescher rounding out that top 5 for that race. That was back on November 5th. Coming up home. Man, time flies, dude.
But I wanna go back on this Austin Dillon appeal. So today he had one final appeal to try to get in, and it looks like the appeal was denied. It looks like it went to the, if I'm not mistaken, the National Motorsports to appeal it. RCR appealed it. Officer Bill Mullis said today that the race data indicated, quote, more likely than not, a rule violation did occur. So he does have it. Look, just because he lost the appeal doesn't mean that he's out. He can still get in. It's just that the last race he has to win. Otherwise, he's out.
It's win or go home at this point and there hasn't even been a total of 16 different winners this year. There have been, I want to say, I think it's 12 or 13 different winners, including first-time Cup winner Harrison Burton. Congratulations to him. His father, Jeff, a well-known racer back in his day and is now on the broadcast team for NBC Sports. Harrison Burton getting his first Cup Series win and locking himself in from being pretty much dead last in driver points, locking himself into the finals.
And that's one thing too. The last time I saw something like that was the 01 Daytona 500. That was the Michael Watt trip where he won it and his brother Darrell Waltrip was calling the race.
That's true.
That was the same day we lost Dale Earnhardt, which was sad.
Yes, the triumph of Michael Waltrip finally winning the Daytona 500 was very much overshadowed by the loss of the great intimidator Dale Earnhardt.
And now Austin Dillon drives that Legacy 3 car. But here's the thing. He wasn't happy after that ruling of the appeal that he was denied. This is what he said afterwards. He says, quote, "I've seen Danny and Joey make moves that have been running people up the track to win. This was my first opportunity in 2 years for me to be able to get a win. I've seen a lot of stuff over the years in NASCAR where people move over people, and it's just part of our sport," end quote. According to Elton Sawyer, the senior vice president of the NASCAR committee competition, he goes on and says, "That's not the way we quote. That's not the way we want to win our race. We want our races to end. That's not the way we want to decide a champion. That's not the way we want to decide an event," end quote. I don't know what many of you think. I'll give you my 2 cents. Boys have at it. I mean, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, they've made enemies in their careers.
Famously, on short track races, NASCAR has famously adopted the term the bump and run.
Yes, we know about that.
Where you will see drivers give a little love tap to the backside of another driver in front of them, and they will slingshot themselves around. And a lot of times that has happened for a win on the final lap. And it seemed like that's what Austin Dillon had done to Joey Logano. He got his front bumper to the backside of Joey Logano's car, and it moved Joey up and out of the way, and it looked like it was going to be clear road, and that contact slowed him down enough where Denny Hamlin was able to get down to his low inside. And in my thought, I would have to say that if it had just been the contact with Joey Logano and he hadn't pushed Hamlin out of the way either, there might be a little bit of a difference there. But what I'm thinking is in the eyes of NASCAR, they're seeing him wreck 2 other drivers for a win and access to the playoffs. And that's where NASCAR is like, wait a second.
So you're thinking that there should be a kind of like, what's the word? A code of conduct. You think there should be a code of conduct when it comes to deciding how they race, especially in the closing laps of a race that could implicate playoff spots. And let me ask you a question. You mentioned bump and run?
The bump and run.
The bump and run? Tell me if you remember this.
Tonight, how we going to get some tonight? Playing big goal right now. Rusty didn't get on the 2 at all that time. Here comes Gordon, right up against the back bumper. Everybody in the crowd on their feet. Big contact right there. Here comes Gordon, right up to the bumper again. It looks a bit ready out here. The bump and rolling. There it is. Gordon underneath to the lead. Come let's go.
That was the 2002 Bristol night race where Jeff Gordon and Rusty Wallace, and those guys had history. This wasn't the first time the bump and run happened. I mean, Rusty bumped Jeff bumped Rusty, and to tell you the truth, do you think NASCAR has gone soft these past few years?
It's tough to say. There's a lot of different things that NASCAR takes into account when it comes to how they draft up their rules packages for each race, and just all aspects of every race weekend. So it's like you have to really, if you really want to dive deep into that, you would have to go talk to Bill France Jr. and get his thoughts.
Because I got some examples here. I already showed like 2 or 3 examples on air from classic races. But what about the 99 season? Terry Labonte getting bumped by Dale Earnhardt. I mean,
at Bristol.
At Bristol. I mean, it was a night race.
But see,
so let me ask you this. Why wasn't he penalized for that? That was a vicious,
you're talking 25 years ago, and NASCAR rules 25 years ago, they were way different in competition and especially knowing who Dale Earnhardt is and who he was and what kind of racer he was. Now, I'm not saying he was a dirty racer. There were a few times, especially early on in his career, where he would race very competitively to improve his overall standings. And I want to say there was one time, I believe it was at Bristol, or it could have been Martinsville, years and years ago, and he was in a feud with the aforementioned Darrell Waltrip and
DW. I remember him.
And during a post race interview with Dale, Dale said, "I just meant to rattle his cage a little bit. He wasn't trying to wreck him; he just wanted to rattle his cage." And also, you look back and when Dale still drove the 3 under the Wrangler sponsorship before.
I remember the Wrangler. I remember the Wrangler car.
The pass in the grass at Charlotte. That was, oh God.
Was that even legal though?
I mean, again, you got to look back and think that was I want to say that was late
in the 80s.
Late 80s. And
because he didn't get the GM good wrench until about the late 80s to the early 90s. That's when he made that transition to the black and 3.
The black and silver
3, the good wrench.
The black and silver wrecking machine. Dale Earnhardt was a special man.
He was.
And NASCAR kind of, I want to say NASCAR, he was the envisioner of how NASCAR has changed their safety rules and everything else. Before he lost his life in that accident in 2001, NASCAR was starting to implement the newer devices such as the Hans, and Dale was very much opposed to it, and also open-faced helmet. In 2001, Dale and Dale Jr. were the only 2 that drove with open-face helmets.
Yes.
Everybody else drove with the full helmet.
Yeah, as the late Bill Simpson, who created the Hans seatbelts, the Hans devices, I believe, are the seatbelts.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said that Earnhardt was going to drive it his way. It was his life, his way. So that was a controversy right there because everyone else was driving the new helmets at that time. And I remember in Daytona during the red flag, that big scary crash involving Tony Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
He actually went on the radio and he told Richard Childress, he goes, "Richard, they need to do something about these cars or it's going to end up killing somebody." Now, to me, that's a little frightening because he says this
and 20 laps later,
about an hour before he loses his life. So that's, but you notice that since his death, there hasn't been a death in NASCAR. They've done a good job with protecting these drivers.
That is true.
But the issue that I have is Kurt Busch had to retire because of an injury
in the
new Gen cars.
The very first year of the Gen 7 cars.
Kurt Busch suffers a concussion. He has to retire from it.
He barely taps the wall at Pocono, but because of the contact, even though it didn't look very severe, he barely tapped the back end of his car into the Pocono wall. Now, all of NASCAR tracks have what's known as safer barrier. Every NASCAR track is required to have safer barrier on all the interior and on the infield and outside retaining walls of the guardrails. And Kurt Busch he spins around out of turn 3 at Pocono and taps his backside into the wall. And even though it looked very minor, it was still enough where the whiplash in the cockpit
caused a lot of injury.
Even with the Hans device, his neck snapped back and forth just enough where it caused him to have to end his career.
Yeah, he never raced again either. He never raced again. After, there were reports that he was going to come back.
It was that year that Bubba Wallace first took over for him in the 45 for 23XI Racing. I believe that was the job he had before he became a 23 driver of the XI racing team. Well, at that point, Bubba Wallace still drove, I want to say he still drove the 43. And
He was driving the 43, but Richard Childress, or no, sorry, Richard Petty actually released him because he wanted him to get a spot somewhere else. Because Denny Hamlin actually approached him because he got one win in that 43 car. That was at Talladega, but that was
the rain shortened Talladega.
yeah, that was his only win there. And then he went to 23i or 23xi, and he's excel. I'll say this, before Bubba was known to be as a political guy. He's remembered for being the one to get rid of the Confederate flag in NASCAR. And that's why you don't see a lot of the Confederate flags flying at these NASCAR tracks anymore. And that was at the time of racial tension. So I mean, you can understand. Yeah, you can understand why it was a big thing.
You look back at what Bubba Wallace has done for NASCAR since he joined the Cup Series, and he is one of few. There are not. I think it's him and either one or two other drivers in the Xfinity and Truck Series that are of African American descent.
Yes.
Everyone else is white. NASCAR has been predominantly a white man's sport.
You look at the gender too. I mean, we remember Danica Patrick. She brought women into racing. She won a race in Indy, and then
only career racing win.
And she jumped into NASCAR. And there's these other women that are following, like Haley Deegan. I mean, she used to be in the Nationwide, or I keep saying Nationwide because that's how I remember it. She used to be in Xfinity, but she's out of contract right now, but she's doing other races. But
she was released by the
yeah, they mutually agreed. They weren't getting the finishes that she was getting in the Truck Series. But I mean, I could see her make a return in NASCAR. She's a talented driver. She just needs more practice and more experiences to get up there. She actually is cute, but she's already taken. She's already engaged. So anybody that wanted to ask her for a number, you're out of luck. She's taken already.
Like any sport.
Actually, I shouldn't be saying that. I got a ring on my finger. So, sorry, baby. Please don't kill me. It was Sean's fault.
Like my fault. like any sport, NASCAR is one of the sports where the Cup Series is the big leagues.
Yeah.
And Xfinity and trucks.
It's like your foot in the door.
It's the minor leagues. That's where you practice, you get better. And when the time comes, there could be an opportunity where a team will ask you to fill in for a driver who may be injured or has to go on leave for any reason. A lot of the Cup drivers you see that are in the Cup Series now that have taken over for the older retired drivers, they got their start in the lower levels, and the teams were asking them to fill in the cars, and now they have the full-time jobs. And it just came out, I want to say yesterday or Saturday, that international superstar Shane Van Gisbergen, he has been offered a full-time position to race in the Cup Series for College Racing. And
he driving the 88? Because that's what I heard. They're bringing back the 88, the legendary 88.
They offered him the spot because College Racing was gifted a third team, and that third team is going to bring the number 88, formerly driven by Dale Earnhardt Jr., out of retirement. And starting next year, Shane Van Gisbergen will be a full-time Cup Series driver. So that's a lot of good things have come out of the world of NASCAR this week. You have Harrison Burton getting his first career win Saturday night at Daytona. Then you have Shane Van Gisbergen coming in, and he's gifted a brand new contract to become a full-time driver and race in a car with a number that is
legendary,
well synonymous with a family dynasty in NASCAR.
Not just that, two families, because before Dale Jr., Dale Jarrett drove the 88. And he won a championship in 1999.
The 88 has some history. The 88 does have some history. Now, I want to say Dale Jr. had more. He definitely had more success prior to joining Hendrick Motorsports, and
he was the driver that was holding DEI.
After his father's passing,
everybody blames Teresa Earnhardt for the fall of that company. I don't know about that one.
I mean, you look at guys when Dale Sr. lost his life, DEI was really sort of starting to become one of those top contending
Companies.
racing teams.
Yeah.
You had both the Earnhardts, Dale Sr. and Dale Jr.
Yeah,
You had
Michael Waltrip.
You had Steve Park.
And they all won races that year.
They did.
We remember
Michael Waltrip won the 500.
Steve Park won the next race
at
Rockingham. And then
Dale
Jr. wins at Daytona a month later.
When NASCAR returned for the Pepsi 400, which is now known as Coke Zero 400, which is the race that NASCAR just ran this past weekend, Dale Jr. And I'll quote the broadcaster. I'll quote the broadcaster on that last lap.
I think I know where that goes.
He said, Dale Jr. using lessons learned from his father to go from 6th to 1st and score the victory in the Pepsi 400.
Remember that one.
And it was mere months after losing his dad, being on that same track and running that same corner on the final lap.
But what made me sad though, Sean, was the second race after the accident when they went to Rockingham. In the first lap, he crashed out the same way his dad crashed out. And I can remember Mike Joy
in turn 4.
Yeah, I remember Mike Joy, who calls for Fox. He's like, from the last lap of last Sunday's race
to the first lap.
Even Dale Waltrip was in tears. He's like, this can't be happening to that boy. And he says some drivers might have tears. I'll tell you right now, I had tears because it's like, man, you just lost your dad on the last lap. You made the decision to go racing because that's what Dale wanted it. And then your son crashes on the first lap the same way his dad crashed out on the last race.
Yep.
So it was even, and then that race rained out and it resumed Monday. Even Darrell Waltrip said on the broadcast the next day, maybe it wasn't meant for Dale Jr. to drive. Yeah. It wasn't, because after that, that's when he started building the consistency. Let me tell you about that year too. We know Jeff Gordon won the title, but Dale Jr. won the big races. He won the Pepsi 400. He also won the race at Dover the week after 9/11, where everybody was healing from the terrorist attacks. And then after a week, NASCAR decided to resume. And then the first race was Dover. He wins the race, does burnouts with the U.S. flag. And then he goes and does the Talladega EA Sports race. They win the 500 and he wins the Noble Winston 500, the bonus. You know the Winston 500? That's where they, if your car is on the light, if your car is lighted red on the top of the hood and you win the race, then you win that $1 million prize. They call it the Noble 500, and you win like $1 million.
My mind went somewhere else.
Yeah.
We had our door opened up and we had an unexpected visitor.
Yeah, just a reminder that fall semester started here at Long Beach City College. So if you're interested in any type of classes, or if you want to get into the radio, television, media career, come check us out. We're here at the PCC campus. Again, more information, you can find us at lbcc.edu. I'm making this announcement right now because my partner here is still in shock because the door opened.
We might have to talk with our professor here for a second after we go off the air. Sorry.
We need to get some signs in here, but you know what? Let's give you some headlines. How about that?
Yeah, let's talk about some sports headlines.
So let's start with football. The Dallas Cowboys today made official with C.D. Lamb. He signed a 4-year deal worth $136 million to stay with the Dallas Cowboys. Was that the right decision or no?
You know, with the success and the connection between Dak Prescott and C.D. Lamb, I say the Cowboys know what they're doing, and it definitely is a pro addition. Now, whether or not Dak Prescott will remain healthy this year, that's yet to be seen. He does have a valuable backup in, I forget his name. Who is that Cowboy backup? What
you talking about? Trey Lance?
There you go. The former backup to Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's not a backup. That guy threw 4 picks in the last game. Yeah, he threw for 400 yards, but he turned the ball over 4 times.
That was the last game
against the Chargers.
Trey Lance. Oh, between Cowboys and Chargers.
Yeah.
Okay. Trey Lance, the former backup for the 49ers under Jimmy Garoppolo. And also when Garoppolo left for the Raiders, he became Brock Purdy's backup. Brock Purdy is still very much predominant in the world of the 49ers.
No, let's see how he does this year because I don't think they're going to have a good year. I mean, that Super Bowl loss was heartbreaking. And normally when you lose a Super Bowl, you don't do well the next year.
Well, you never know. It's a new 2024 is a new season, and teams have had shakeups in the offseason, and things have happened. Brandon Ayuk is still up in the air as to whether or not he's going to stay in San Francisco or if he's going to go somewhere else.
Nah, that's still up in the air, but we'll just have to keep a monitor on that. But let's talk about the Packers. They picked up a new backup quarterback. So Malik Willis, who was a 7th-round pick. Actually, no, he was a backup quarterback in Tennessee. He's now the backup quarterback for Jordan Love in Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Packers are trying to build up as well.
Let's flash back to that to the final preseason between Cowboys and Chargers. Funny thing happened to the Chargers. Most of what will be their starting roster, the big names on the starting 53-man roster, they got stuck in their Dallas hotel elevator.
Yeah, I heard about that. I was like, what the heck?
They had to climb out of the top service hatch of the elevator, and they had to be rescued by the Dallas Fire Department.
Yeah, I was like, what was all that about? I was like,
I don't know.
You don't hear that often. You just don't. When I saw that, I was like, what in the hell? Like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
You sure you had nothing to do with that?
How could it have been me?
I don't know. You're a ride operator, aren't you? You know about that stuff?
Not elevators. I don't work with elevators.
You work in Asbury Farm, no?
Yeah, but we don't work with elevators.
Doesn't matter. You know maintenance. Here's a news coming out of Denver. So, Tim Patrick might lose his job, according to a source from ESPN, Jeff Legwold. He's seeking a trade after battling 2 years of injuries. If there's no trade, according to the Broncos, if there's no trade for him, he will be released. Talk about a guy that's been fighting injuries and trying to play his butt off. Now that he's being threatened with his job, if no one wants him.
Well, he's a veteran wide receiver, and I'm sure if there's a struggling team that needs that middle offense and the run game, somebody will give him some money.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's not a personal decision. The NFL is a business. This is how they conduct business. As you know, they're trying to make the 53 roster cut.
Exactly. That's what the preseason is for.
Yeah, that's why you see all these rookies, these unrestricted free agencies, because they want to have a shot, knowing that there's only 3 preseason games. There's no more 4.
You will not see the starting roster, like the big name starters.
Well, there were some.
You won't really see a majority of teams use their starting roster.
Actually, there's some teams that did use their starters this past weekend. I know Brock Purdy played, I believe, a series or half. We saw Trevor Lawrence from the Jaguars. He played a couple series. So there were some teams that even Patrick Mahomes played a couple reps in preseason. And I know teams like Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play. He was going to, but then the Jets at the last minute said, no, you're not playing.
They want to make sure that he is absolutely 100% after that season ending. 8 minutes into his first game with the Jets last year, that season-ending Achilles tear that just absolutely devastated the land of the Jets and the New York fan base.
Yeah, I mean, they want his play to last at least a season.
I mean, how long did they give him the contract for?
They've invested a lot of money in him, so that's why.
Didn't they give him a double-digit contract?
Yeah, they restructured it just to make him.
Or maybe they signed up for 5 or 6 years.
Who knows? Can he even make it 5 or 6 years?
He's a veteran. He could do it.
Oh, yeah, and then some news coming out of the Rams. Remember Ernest Jones?
Yes.
They're one of their best players.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, the Rams are going to seek permission. They're going to give him permission to seek a trade. You wonder what happened there.
Who knows?
He was happy to come back, but I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But we got some scores right now, or some games coming up today. We got the Angels taking on the Tigers tomorrow. That's at 3:40. The Dodgers kick off a 3-game stand with the Orioles were fighting for first place. That was at 7-10.
My friend just threw out the first pitch yesterday for the Dodgers.
Oh, is that why they lost?
They won 3-1.
No, I heard they lost.
The Dodgers beat Tampa 3-1 yesterday.
Didn't they play like a doubleheader? Because did they split two games, or was it Saturday?
No, they played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the Dodgers won 2 of the 3.
Well, UCLA is kicking off their season this Saturday against Hawaii. The game starts at 4:30. That will be on CBS. And then on Sunday, the Galaxy hosts St. Louis at 11:45. That's going to be check your local listings.
I want to say there was one more thing with the NFL. I believe it was, oh my God, who was it? I know the kid's name, just Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
He was named Week 1 starter.
Yeah.
For who drafted him?
Broncos.
Denver. That's right.
So he's the first rookie since John Elway in '83.
Russell Wilson is not going to be on that Denver offense in Week 1.
No, he's a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's actually fighting for a starting spot.
Well, Russell Wilson moved to Pittsburgh?
Were you sleeping under a rock? He got traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, or he signed with the Steelers.
I must have been.
You must have been working at Knott's too many hours. You forgot.
I must have been under a rock.
Well, it's been a long time since you've been here. And also, USC will kick off their season on Sunday against number 13 LSU. That game will be on ABC, and it is the Trojans' debut. I believe the Big 12 there right now.
They are a member of what is now the Big 10. The Big 10, which is no longer the Big 10. A lot of other schools have moved into the Big 10. But now, both UCLA and USC. UCLA has been in the Big 10 for a couple of years now, and now USC joins them. The Pac-12 is non-existent. It was their last year, this past year, in spring of 2024. All of the last games of the Pac-12 conference finished up, and the Pac-12 network is no more. USC joined UCLA in moving to the Big 10, and now they will be playing big-name schools such as the Big House, Michigan, the Wolverines. They'll be playing them. They'll be playing Ohio State. They'll be playing Alabama. They've got a lot of competition that they have just forced themselves into by joining that Big 10 conference.
What does this show you as far as the conference? Does it mean like there's more money involved that schools will be willing to change?
Money, I don't know. College football isn't so much about the money. College football, these are still student athletes.
Because I think about it, man. Like I feel like the Pac-12 didn't even fight to keep this conference alive. It's like they knew the end was near. Like they were like, no, we're not even gonna do anything. Doesn't that like give you like a intriguing feeling about that? I just didn't see them. I just didn't see anyone put an effort to it. Nobody said.
To be honest, I didn't really follow the downfall of the Pac-12. All I know is I caught up with it, and it just happened that the schools were leaving the Pac-12 and moving to other conferences, and the Pac-12 just disappeared, and nobody wanted to fix anything.
To be honest, I just believed it was more because of the playoffs and the rankings.
Could there have been people out there trying to keep the Pac-12 alive? I think so.
Yeah, I just didn't see it.
Was it enough? No.
I just feel like they didn't do enough to kind of say, hey, let's stay here.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things that a lot of things can happen to any sort of situation. Pac-12 just happened to be one of those.
You never see them in the college football playoffs. It's always been the Big 12, the SEC. I want to say the ACC, Big 10. So these East Coast leagues are always like taking over the spots.
So I'm going back in time here, August 5th of last year, CBS Sports writer Dennis Dodd put out a article that he titled "The Pac-12 is Dead as We Know It. Just don't expect the Big 10, Big 12, or anyone else to take the blame." And it all started it all started really when Colorado left the Big 12, and then you had Oregon and Washington move over to the Big 10. The Big 12 brought in Arizona. They're both Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State and Utah. And he goes on to write, forget the Power Five. Whatever is left of the Pac-12 isn't what the Pac-12 used to be. The Conference of Champions, the classy, respected league that gave us John Wooden, John McKay, Sonny Six Killer, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Bill Walsh, Bill Walton, Jackie freaking Robinson, to quote his article. That shining jewel in the West is now gone, or about as close to gone as possible. Well, this was back in August. The Pac-12 is now goodbye. He says, once the Pac-12 lost Colorado, the Big Ten had cover to engage with Oregon and Washington. Big Ten presidents completely changed their minds about expansion. Before last year, the Big Ten was like, no, we are the Big Ten. We are 10 of the largest NCAA colleges in the world. We are going to stay this way. And then after the Pac-12 started to fall apart last year, and they see these other top schools, the presidents of these universities are like, okay, well, maybe it is time for a change. So one of the major factors for the Pac-12 falling apart is the media. The Pac-12 network just could not find a way.
They're just gonna get viewers.
They weren't getting viewership, and they could not regain any media rights. They couldn't find any major networks that were willing to pick up contracts to broadcast their games.
Well, I mean, the only big games they covered were USC games, Oregon, Colorado because of Deion Sanders, UCLA.
Coach Prime.
So, I mean, I just think it's more about money-wise, and then just the exposure of the programs. But we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Meanwhile, let's get you some caught up on baseball right now. Right now, we got the Cubs taking on the Pirates, 13-6. That's in the top of the ninth.
Who's winning that one?
The Cubs.
Wow.
Blue Jays are taking on the Red Sox. Blue Jays are up 7-3, bottom of the ninth.
Here's some sports history there. That Red Sox and Blue Jays ball game. It was the second game of a doubleheader.
Yeah.
That first game was a suspended game that was suspended 61 days ago, back in June, before the trade deadline. Danny Jansen was the starting catcher for the Blue Jays.
Yeah.
And that game was suspended in the top of the first inning due to rain.
Yeah, I remember that.
They rescheduled it, and the trade deadline comes up. And Danny Jansen had been with the Blue Jays since he was 17 years old. He worked with now current Blue Jays manager John Schneider in the minor leagues and joined him at the major league level.
Mm-hmm.
Come the trade deadline, Toronto's like, okay, we're going to get a package from Boston for you. And they send Danny Jansen to Boston. Then the rumors started to flow. We have a potential blockbuster history thing here where Danny Jansen could become the first player in MLB history to play in the same game to play in the same game on two teams.
Yeah, that was hard to believe.
And that suspended game was resumed this morning at 1:00 in Boston. And Danny Jansen took over behind the plate for the catcher's position for the Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
And who took his spot in the DH position to resume his at-bat with one strike and one out?
Drum roll.
Dalton Varsho. Now, of course, Danny Jansen and the Red Sox had not seen Toronto since the trade deadline. So there was a lot of emotion going on with Danny Jansen as he was reconnecting with all of his old teammates and reconnecting with John Schneider. And there was the pregame moments between Jansen and his former team from a month ago, where now it's like, okay, well, now I'm actually your opponent, so I can't be too somber about this.
Yeah.
But I can do that at the same time, and well, now I'm your opponent, so now we're trying to beat you.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting post-game, see how that goes.
And it only took 61 days, but somebody finally got on the board in that game, and that was Toronto in the top of the first on a George Springer home run that went over the Green Monster.
Well, let's see how the post game goes. It's 2 outs in that bottom of the ninth. The Blue Jays are about to win this one from the way it looks. Atlanta taking on the Twins. That's 9-1 in the bottom of the second. Can't believe that one. Padres taking on the Cardinals in St. Louis. Padres 7-2, bottom of the sixth. The worst team in the MLB, the White Sox, taking on the Tigers. 2-1, top of the sixth. They already got 100 losses. First team to do that in 131 games since 1900.
In the modern 100 losses after 130 games in the modern era. And this year they became the earliest team by calendar date to be eliminated from playoff contention. Now, I think that was way out of reach for the White Sox much earlier in the season, where everybody was like, okay, this team absolutely sucks. The first 14-game losing streak, and then the most recent 21-game losing streak. White Sox fans are just desperate to do anything. I feel bad for Miguel Vargas, who was traded from the Dodgers. The Dodgers traded over Miguel Vargas to the White Sox, and Miguel Vargas is just I've seen videos and posts on X that have shown him in the dugout and just his look of utter disappointment, where he's like, why did they trade me to this team?
What in the hell am I doing here? That's the case.
On the opposite side of things, the Royals are trying to make a postseason run coming off of a 100-loss season last year.
That manager should get the manager of the year if they make it.
The Royals are coming off of a 100-loss season last year, and they are trying to make a postseason run. They are trying to battle for that American League Central Division. And it's MLB this year. There are a lot of shakeups in some of the divisions with teams that are on top that you would not really expect. The Mariners, for example, the Mariners have been in a battle for the American League West. They've been in a back and forth battle with the Astros for quite some time, and it had appeared that the Mariners were going to just run away with the American League West.
And then 2 months later, their boss gets fired, their manager.
For whatever reason, they fire Scott Service. That surprises everyone.
2 words.
You're fired.
Actually, no, 3 words. I got 3 words. Late season collapse.
Well, that is one of the reasons that was quoted, that they had let go of Service because of some late season issues with the team and not really having as much control. So we'll just have to see where the American League West ends up and who does come out on top. Will it be the Astros going for, what is it, 9th or 10th consecutive top winning season in the American League West?
Why not call it the Houston Astros West?
See, here's what I don't understand. The way that the MLB has some of these divisions shaken up, the Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers, they are in Texas, in the middle of the country, and they play in a Western division with 3 teams on the west coast of the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that you have 2 Central teams playing in a Western division when you could have the Rangers and the Astros? Now, granted, the Astros, up until 2006, were a part of the National League Central division.
Yeah, they weren't that good. They only made like 1 World Series appearance, and they just
2005. They lost the 2005 World Series to the Chicago White Sox.
Exactly.
The aforementioned 100-loss Chicago White Sox. Now, why the Astros made the move from the National League to the American League and then moved from the Central Division over to the West, I don't know. But apparently, the Western Division has proved very successful for the Astros.
Yeah, they have. They've even though the cheating scandal came out too a couple years later.
Everybody still gets booed for that.
Yeah.
No matter where those players are, if they're still active, no matter where they are on the road and for whatever team they play for, if they were a part of that 2017 to 2019 team,
shame on you.
Shame on them. And also, ooh.
No, as Steve Wilkos will say in the show, as Steve Wiggles will say, "Get the hell off my stage." You get the hell off my stage. So finals now that are coming in. So we mentioned the Blue Jays and Red Sox. They had a doubleheader. In game one, Blue Jays took it 4-1, and game two just ended 7-3. So they swept the doubleheaders. Also, another team that had doubleheaders today was the Royals and the Guardians, as Sean mentioned. Game one went to the Royals 4-3, and the Royals swept game two 9-4. The Astros lose in Philly 2-3.
By the way,
Some games that are underway right now. The Mariners and the Rays are just underway. That's on Fox Sports 1. And then the Marlins and Rockies underway, and it's some more finals. The Yankees beat the Nationals 5-2. As we continue to monitor Judge, or I believe it's Aaron Judge, his pace for 63 home runs.
He also got career hit number 1,000 in that game this afternoon, making some incredible defensive plays, including robbing a home run and turning a double play in that game, while also robbing that home run. Here's a little update on the Cubs and the Pirates. That game is now going to the bottom of the ninth. The Cubs are now on top 18-6. So that is, let's see. On that
It'd be funny if they give that one up.
On that box score, it was a scoreless first inning. The Cubs put 2 runs on in the second, 1 run in the third, nothing in the fourth and fifth, and then they just absolutely exploded in the sixth inning, plating 8 runs, and then nothing in the seventh, 1 more run in the eighth, and another 6 runs just now in the top of the ninth. So their final box score on the night is going to look like this. The Cubs will finish this game with 18 runs on 21 hits and no errors. And as it stands right now, the Pirates have 6 runs on only 10 hits.
Looks like the Cubs pitchers got a day's rest with all those hits from the Cubs offense, but I can't believe that. So,
well, there have been quite a few games that have been lopsided since the initiation of that pitch clock. You go back to last year, and the Angels absolutely demolished the Rockies, 25-4, I believe was that final score.
Yeah, it was when I checked, it was like 25-0, and then they were nice enough to give them at least a couple of runs to avoid a shutout.
Here's my little hot take on the Angels right now. Starting pitching, depending on who it is, it can be good. Tyler Anderson is the number 1 starter on the roster right now after we lost Patrick Sandoval and Shohei Ohtani. Tyler Anderson is number 1 in our starting rotation. He now stands, and I believe he has an 11-12 record on the season with I believe it's a sub-3 ERA. But then when it comes to our bullpen, my God, that is where the games are lost. When the Angels make the move to the bullpen,
you better hope and pray.
That is where things have gone terribly bad. Now, here's what I can say. This past weekend in Toronto, the Angels brought up Ryan Zefarjan. They got him in the trade with the Red Sox for Luis Garcia. That also brought Nico Cavadas to the Angels, who in that series against Toronto, in the first game, hit a 3-run home run into the top of the ninth inning, and the Angels defeat 6-3 in that game. But he hit the 3-run home run in the top of the ninth inning for his first major league hit, his first major league home run, and his first major league RBI. All 3 off of 1 swing of the bat. And then this young kid, Ryan Zefarjan, makes his debut yesterday, and he gets brought in on a 2-2 count. Manager Ron Washington took out pitcher Matt Moore with a 2-2 count with 1 out, and Ryan Zefarjan comes in, and 1 pitch on the very first pitch he throws, as soon as he comes, the very first major league pitch that he throws when he gets out of the bullpen, boom, swing and a miss, strike 3. Very first major league strikeout for the kid Ryan Zefarjan. Good on him. Good for the Angels, because granted, the farm system for the Angels is a little struggling for the time being, but the Angels did just extend their general manager Perry Manassian. Whether or not that's a good move, I don't know. We'll have to see. But they gave him another 2-year contract, so we'll just see if Artie Moreno will relinquish some of the leash that he has on Perry Manassian and let Manassian cook, as some people like to say. Let him cook. It's coming off season and see if we can do anything, because the Angels, they're really starting to become a rebuild franchise. You've got players like Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon.
And I wanted to cut you out there. So basically, this is leading up to our final segment, which is final thoughts. And one of my final thoughts, I wanted to ask you, because I asked Jesus on this last week.
Mm-hmm.
So we know Mike Trout's out for the season again with another injury.
After re-tearing the same meniscus.
What do you do in this case as far as his future? He's got 6 years left on a 12-year contract he signed. He hasn't played basically half the season in the last 2 years. What do you do with an all-star like that? What can you do to keep him on the field?
As much as I hate to say this, it pains me as an Angels fan to see the team struggle as much as they do. And when it comes to Mike Trout, he has not been the same since the 2014 AL West division title, where the past 4 years, ever since coming out of COVID, from 2021 all the way up to this year, he has missed very large chunks of each season since the COVID 60 season, or as some people call it, the Disney season for the Dodgers winning that World Series. They call that the Disney ring. And with Mike, I wish him the best of luck with whatever he does, whether or not he decides to remain in Anaheim and stay with the Angels. He has said it in interviews before that he is too much. He's too loyal to the Angels fan base to leave Anaheim. That he wants to remain on this contract for the next 6 years and stay on his 12-year contract, where he ends up in after the 2030 campaign. I don't know. I don't know where he will end up, what he'll do, if he will even still be with the Angels by that year, finishing that 12-year contract, or if he will finally just say to himself, you know what, I want to win a championship before I retire. I need to go to a team that I know can win a championship. Now, not saying that the Angels can't at some point rebuild themselves and become a championship winning team. That is yet to be seen. I mean, we haven't seen a caliber team like that since 2014, but most of that 2014 team is now done and gone. So,
and that led me to my next point, to my next question. We know they signed a lot of players to big contracts. Do you see this as a reason why they can't, provide as far as pitching and defense? Because we look at these big contracts they signed, Albert Pujols, Mike Trout, Josh Hamilton, Jared Weaver.
Well, Jared Weaver did.
He's the only one that's probably come out well.
Jared Weaver pitched his whole career for the Angels, and he ended up as a product of Cal State Long Beach. He was a dirtbag. The former home bullpen, now the visitors bullpen, is named after him at Blair Field. It's just one of those things that the money that the Angels have thrown out there for these big players, including Anthony Rendon, who I don't think we have time for me to voice out my opinion on that contract. Needless to say, the Angels are spending money on a guy who doesn't even put a top priority or want a top priority to be playing baseball. He'd rather focus on other things other than playing. And when he does play, granted, his defense in the hot corner at third base can be good, but he just has to be in that right mindset in each game. So will it just be, is it time for Artie Moreno to finally sell the team that he tried to do 2 years ago, but then pulled them off the market and said that his work wasn't finished? He still had more of a job to do in Anaheim. I don't know. I will say this: had Artie Moreno sold the Angels 2 years ago, there were some top suitors that were being thrown around, like the owner of the Clippers, Steve Ballmer. He was a top name that was thrown around to buy the team. There was also a Japanese corporate bigwig that was that their name was thrown around as a potential buyer. I will say this, especially for the Japanese corporate team, had they or Steve Ballmer, these multi-billionaires, had they bought the team with Shohei still on it, you're talking $4 or $5 billion for this team.
Yeah.
Because having Shohei on it, there's more money. But now that Shohei is gone and the only top guy you have on your team is Mike Trout, you'd be lucky to get $1 billion for it.
And not just that, your main guy is actually injured and he's not even playing.
Mm-hmm.
So this team is about 20 or more games below 500.
Season low. They're
in last place.
They'll be lucky. They will be lucky
to get 50 wins.
Well, they're at 54 right now. They will be lucky if they even get close to 70. This year could be the worst season in franchise history.
So it's been almost 10 years since this team made the playoffs. Do you expect to see maybe the Angels organization cleaning house at the end of this year? Or is this going to be more nightmare as they try to get money to rebuild this team?
I really have no idea. I don't know what the Angels are going to do. Do I want to see them become a team that can succeed? Absolutely. Do I think it's possible? Yes, but there are some major changes that have to be made, including quite possibly Artie Moreno selling the team to somebody else who has more money and would be able to rebuild the team and rebuild the franchise that is the Los Angeles Angels.
Now, my next question, and part of my last question will be here. Okay, so the Oakland A's are moving, right? The turmoil with what's happened there.
They are.
Attendance is very low.
They're leaving the Coliseum and they're moving to Sacramento.
Do you see this happening here with the Angels if there isn't any dire changes made? If we go into next year with the same lineup, with the same managed staff, the same owner, will there be a rebellion in the OC saying, you know what, we're not going to these games, we're not giving you our money until you make big investments and put us back in championship contention?
Look, here's one of the problems. The Angels, now granted, prices go up every year because inflation is a thing, and that will continue to be a thing.
That's your president's fault, by the way.
Well, he's not. I won't say he's my. I won't say he's my president, but my sister once said, in regards to our current president, the lights are on, but nobody's home.
Oh, that light's about to go off soon. But no, it's never been home. That the side of that head has been, vacant for God knows how long.
The one good thing I can say about our president right now is the speech that he gave, his farewell speech at the Democratic National Convention last week, was one of the best speeches I have ever heard from him. That's one good thing I can say about him right now.
Really? I mean, like, I could have. Oh, wait, that's right. I went to the bathroom when he went up on the podium. I had to put that in there somewhere.
So anyway, when it comes to the Angels, it's resurfaced this year that was part of the 2021 into 2022 when Artie Moreno was saying he was going to sell the team. There was the issue that came about with the city of Anaheim and the OC Vibe.
The fallout too, right? There was a fallout in the
Well, it was
in the office of the I think the mayor had to step down and some council members stepped down.
The mayor of Anaheim, former mayor of Anaheim, Harry Sedu, he had to resign his office because it was shown and proven that there were some investment scandals going on between him and the city. And at that time, the Angels were quite possibly thinking about building a new stadium and wanting to build a new stadium. And the LBC and former mayor Robert Garcia, who's now our congressman, he sent a message to the Angels.
Not my congressman.
He sent a message to the Angels and said, hey, we have prime real estate on the waterfront that we will offer to you. If you give us the money, we will offer you this prime real estate right here by the water for you to build a new stadium, and you can come to Long Beach.
And they even have the vacant Long Beach Arena too.
You can be the Long Beach Angels. You could go back to being the California Angels. You could do whatever you want. And the city of Long Beach was prepared to offer the Angels their city, our city, as a home.
Yeah, and until that scandal fallout.
And now this year, it's kind of starting to come back into a thing where it's being thrown around that the Angel Stadium, it was estimated, Angel Stadium needs about an estimated $150 million worth of repairs to get that stadium really back into where it needs to be. And the Angels it's kind of resurfacing that the Angels are trying to fight the city of Anaheim and say, look, either you pay this $150 or $200 million worth of renovations to our stadium, or we may just leave Anaheim and try and build a new stadium somewhere else. Whether or not Long Beach will still reopen the offer and allow them to build a new stadium right there on the waterfront on Shoreline Drive, I don't know.
How late are you guys going to be in here?
We're almost done.
Okay, cool. So just lock up when you're finished.
Okay.
Because I'm out of here.
Okay, see ya.
Oh,
What?
my bag is still in that.
Go get it. So yeah, going back to Sean's point, I mean, the scandal is what pretty much hurt the Angels, and here I'm going to put my take on this as well. So let's give it a go. When you have losing seasons for 10 years, in the midst of it, there's a scandal at a politician, and then the head mayor has to resign because of illegal investments. Not a lot of contribution is coming.
It's the hallway door when you leave. That hallway door, right? Like when it's always unlocked.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. We were having some delay here on the mic. But going back to it is, we have this situation where there's a mayor scandal. The team's just losing. The owner is not doing much. There's not a lot of high caliber free agents coming over here. Your best player, Japanese player, signed with your rival city, and he's breaking records. And by the way, he just joined the 40-40 club. You wonder what all these stats, what could have happened if Shohei Ohtani stayed here? What could have happened if Mike Trout stayed healthy? We don't know, because there's always been injury issues with him. Not saying that it's fault, but we still wonder, it's more of what have you done for me lately? And that's what my point is there, Sean, is with all this that's happened, not a lot of free agents are coming to Anaheim. You don't hear the big players coming here. No trades, nothing, because there's no money. So, and the team on the verge of possibly leaving Anaheim?
Yeah, that's one of the, it's a very large issue where some players do actually like the thought of playing for the Angels because they love the city of Anaheim when they come here as the visiting team. But then there's also those players that are like, you know what? I don't think so. I will say this. 2 years ago, prior to the players' lockout happening, where players had to renegotiate their contracts with the players' union and MLB, Aaron Judge, who we all know and love now as a New York Yankee, and who probably will remain a New York Yankee for most of his career, as Mike Trout has done with the Angels. Aaron Judge was at the end of his current contract with the Yankees, and he was looking for a new contract. I don't know if this was ever confirmed, but I want to say that I read a few sources that had reported that prior to the lockout, Aaron Judge and his agent had actually had a contract drafted with the Angels. And then the lockout, and it was almost said and done, and all Aaron had to do was fly out to LA and sign the contract. And then the lockout happened. And pretty much any free agent contracts that were being drafted, voided, they were out the door. Again, I don't know if these were ever confirmed. I want to say it was. But just to think the possibility of a superstar in Aaron Judge possibly being a Los Angeles Angel 2 years ago and joining the likes of Shohei and Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon, all being on the same team, these big powerhouse players and veteran players, except for Shohei. He'd only been in the league for a few years, but he was still a powerhouse in his own, in 2021, coming off of the unanimous MVP season. I just can't imagine what the fan base reaction in Anaheim would have been had that news broken that Aaron Judge signs a multi-million-dollar deal with the Angels to become a Los Angeles Angel and play with Mike Trout and Shohei. That, that
Yeah, I agree. He would have. I think Shohei Ohtani would have stayed, and maybe Mike Trout wouldn't got hurt so much because half the time they wouldn't put it on his shoulders to
they
get some runs in.
they could if Aaron Judge had signed with the Angels, if that had been a thing, Mike Trout could possibly have been given some more time off to where he wouldn't be playing. He wouldn't have been the everyday center fielder. He could take a few days off and play as the DH and make sure that he wasn't overstressing himself. But after 10 years in the league at that point, Mother Nature
Runs his course.
Mother Nature and Father Time,
Yeah, it catches up to
they
you.
run their course. And with Mike, he's been in the league now for 13 years, going on 14, and he's still young, but he's been playing so much that time just hasn't been very good to him, and he's somehow finding more ways to be injured than what should happen. So like 2022, we were maybe 3 or 4 weeks into the season, and the Angels are playing Houston, and he gets hit on the elbow by a pitch, and something ended up happening in his elbow where he missed a chunk of time there. And then what else was it in 2022?
It was a leg injury, I think it was.
Was it his leg?
Yeah, that's when he missed like half the season. More than half the season, actually.
And
Like 2/3 of it.
2023, last year.
It was like an ACL injury.
No, last year he broke his hamate bone in his hand.
Yes.
He fractured the hamate bone on a swing. That was on the 4th of July in San Diego.
I remember that one. That was like, I couldn't believe it.
I
remember it said that he left the game, and then everyone figured, he'll be back. But then the next day it came out that it was more serious than it was first reported.
The Angels were down in San Diego playing the Padres on the 4th of July, and Mike Trout took one swing in the second inning, and he was in very obvious discomfort, but he managed to stick it out. But then in between innings, they showed he had gone down the tunnel and into the locker room. And then, the next day it was revealed that tests showed he had a fractured hamate bone, and he was going to miss a good fraction of the season. Now, he did manage to, last year, that took him out for, I believe, the rest of the year. 2022, he managed to come back and play, I think, the last month or so of the season, where he reached 40 home runs. He hit home run number 40 on the very last day of the year in Oakland, where he hit a towering 475 feet?
Yeah, it was exactly around that frame.
It was like somewhere around there, but he demolished that baseball that day. And that was the last home run that he hit that year. But, Mr. MVP Mike Trout, Mr. 3-time MVP, what he ends up doing with the rest of his career, I don't know.
We'll just have to wait to see what happens in the offseason, whether he'll stay or go. But let me ask you one more question. So he's from Philadelphia.
He is.
He's hometown Philly.
He is a Philly fan. Well, he's not a Philadelphia Phillies fan. He is a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
But what's the scenario that the hometown Phillies may want to make a move to bring him in?
Well, could I see that happening? Possibly. I've thought about that. Where could Mike Trout possibly go play maybe 1 or 2 years for the Phillies and be in his hometown where he grew up and play for the hometown team, who I'm sure when he was a boy probably went to Philly games at the old Vet Stadium. I think it was Vet Stadium.
They were at Vet Stadium before they went to their new field,
which is Citizens Bank Ballpark.
Yeah.
But yeah, could it happen? I don't know. Maybe. Could he go join Bryce Harper in Philadelphia?
Yeah, that would be a championship team right there.
Well, the Phillies came close 2 years ago, but lost it in Game 6 to the Astros.
Yeah, the Astros.
Well, see, okay, so 2022 when the Astros won it, the cheating scandal had been out for 2 years, and people still thought maybe
People were they were plunking them. They were getting plunked. Even Dusty Baker, the manager, was kind of like saying, "Hey, can we stop doing this to our players?"
yeah, well, hey, I got to give props where props are due to Dusty Baker. The man, generational talent, generational manager. Every team he was on and he worked for had some form of success. The fact that Dusty Baker led the Astros to 7 consecutive AL West titles and then finally brought them to well, I take that back. I'm wrong. Dusty Baker did not lead the Astros to 7 consecutive World Series, 7 consecutive AL West titles.
But it was 7 consecutive playoff appearances, I believe.
The franchise themselves had those playoff appearances.
Yeah.
It was in 2017. It was AJ Hinch that was the manager, and I still to this day think that Rob Manfred should have done something more. I think that entire 2017 team, in my honest opinion, that team should have been. You can't strip somebody of their world title. They won the world title. So you can't really strip it from them. You can't say, oh, 2017 Astros, you're no longer the world champions. We're going to take it from you and give it to the Dodgers. They can't just do that. Or, well, they could, but I think there would be quite a bit of backlash if they were to do that. But in terms of the punishment that Rob Manfred dealt, he chose, it was AJ Hinch that was suspended 1 year. He lost his job from the Astros and now manages the Detroit Tigers. And it's hard to put into words. Should there have been more punishment to the players? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should Jose Altuve, George Springer, Kyle Tucker?
Personally, I think the whole organization should have been punished.
Yeah, there's some stuff there. There's some things there that should have been done, but weren't. The entire team should have probably been suspended for at least 1 season, and the Astros probably shouldn't have been even a thing. But
I think the Saints bounty scandal severe more punishment because the coach Sean Payne was suspended for a year. Greg Williams, the mastermind behind the scandal, he was in indefinite suspension. He was gone for a while.
See, there's
Jonathan Velma, he was suspended for a year. Scott Fujita, 10 games. So
there's the difference between the NFL and the MLB. MLB, their seasons are a lot longer. They play 162 games a year over the course of 5 or 6 months. And the NFL is just a quick 18-week season in 3 months. So
I still would have suspended them for a season because it's 162 games, like you said. But they lose money. That's a lot of money they would lose in a season.
That's true. The Astros would lose money. The players would lose money. And God, there's so much that can be said about the 2017 to 19 Astros, and that's been there, done that plenty of times, and have booed the Astros plenty of times when they have been out here to Anaheim, and I've gone and watched them play the Angels, including 2022, the opening of 2022 when the Angels opened the season at home against the Astros. I was there at opening day, and I was there 2 days later. So I saw the Angels lose their first game of the season,
and you see them win later. I remember that game too. They were throwing home runs. The Astros back on the field.
People were bringing trash cans to the games, and they were also taking the trash cans from the stadium and throwing them onto the field.
If you're unaware of that, trash can statement is because they're in the World Series against the Dodgers, exactly like Sean was doing. They were making noises.
Fastball.
They were making noises, and they were like codes of the pitching. So that's why they did that. But
now, see, here's the thing. Pretty much every team has done that same thing where they can see on a video feed the catcher. This is before PitchCon. So they could zoom in on the catcher. They could see the catcher's hand giving the signals. Every team has done that. But it's because of how egregious and what other methods, including adding the trash can, the methods that the Astros were using those years in question, those methods, that is what got them in trouble, because it was so egregiously bad that it was so clear they were cheating their way to win and hitting those pitches. Not to mention the 2017 American League Championship Series, Jose Altuve hits the walk-off home run that sends the Astros to the World Series. He hit that off of Aroldis Chapman. And Aroldis Chapman is a pitcher that to this day is still, he's a lights out kind of guy where you're not really supposed to hit a whole lot of home runs off of him. But then Altuve, his short little 5'7" short stack of a man, hell, I'm tall. Both of us are taller than Jose Altuve.
Oh yeah, I could take him out and fight any day.
Like, I'm sorry to say this, but Jose Altuve is a short stack. He's one of the shorter players in MLB. And then you compare him, the amount of times I've seen the pictures of when the Astros and Yankees have played each other, and I've seen Jose Altuve standing at second base and Aaron Judge standing at second base. The size difference. There is a whole foot and there's like a foot and a half size difference between Aaron Judge and Jose Altuve. Judge is 6'7", and Altuve is like 5'6".
Just use his big foot and you can stomp on him. That is funny.
But anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's going to go ahead and wrap up. What a way to kick off the semester here at LBCC.
Join us
Again,
next time.
Yeah, next time. We want to thank the LBCC television media department for allowing us to broadcast here. So we're going to be here throughout the semester. Sean, it was great seeing you again. Thank you for joining us.
I just want to throw, we probably should have brought this up at the start of the broadcast, but the LBCC television family lost a very dear member last week.
Yep.
He was he was the guy that pretty much allowed us to access this room and use pretty much his equipment and form this podcast, and that's Doug Wood, and he passed away sadly last Thursday after a short but hard battle with terminal brain cancer that unfortunately did take his life. And it really all just came up on us all of a sudden. Like we were in class last semester, and
we just
the last time we saw him, he was, at least what we saw, was a clean bill of health.
Yeah.
Didn't show that anything was wrong with him.
Yeah, the last time I saw him was when we were at the Grand Prix doing the interviews with the CTE department and other people, and he ran up to them and said, we did good jobs on the interview, that he really appreciated our hard work. And I had the honor to know him since a long time, 20 years ago. And then when I came back here in 2022, and he invited me to take his internship, and, he was my supervisor, and he helped me develop the interview skills that I would obtain.
Yeah.
And he's going to be missed. I'm going to miss him a lot. He was one of those that was well respected, who really worked hard. And he actually respected us too.
That spot is going to be tough to fill. We do have somebody here that will graciously fill in his position as the audio video manager for the football season this year. But nobody will really ever be able to be up to the same caliber that Doug was.
No, it'll never be the same.
And have the skills and knowledge that Doug had to control everything.
But unfortunately, in this business, we have to move forward, and that's what we have to do. So this one we want to dedicate to Mr. Douglas Wood.
May he rest in peace.
For all he's done for this program, for this school. We want to say thank you, extend our condolences to his family, and thank you, Doug. We love you, we'll miss you. And then also we want to extend our condolences to the wrestling world. Psycho Sid, a former WWE champion, passed away today at the age of 63. So again, we want to extend our heartfelt sympathies as well to the wrestling world. And
the wrestling world has lost a lot of people.
They have.
Both of the Wild Samoans died within a month of each other. First it was Sika and then Afa. Roman Reigns is probably beside himself.
Oh yeah.
He's lost his dad and his uncle in the span of a month. Both of the Wild Samoans gone. And, Afa and Sika Anoa'i, the Anoa'i dynasty in the world of wrestling.
Yeah, it's a sad situation. But again, we're reminded every day, live life to the fullest. But again, we want to thank Sean. Sean, it was nice coming for you coming today.
Pleasure being back.
He'll be with us throughout the semester, and we just want to say thank you. Jesus will be back with us next time, and you can tune in here on Podbean, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good job.
That's a wrap.
Man, this thing kept annoying me.
What? Oh, the fact that it was like shutting off?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, goddamn.
I gotta tell Hurst to fix this. This looks like it's a new computer.
I think it's the same.
No, it's a different one, dude.
Is it?
Yeah.